Welcome to the latest episode of the B Movie Club. I'm your host, Kevin. This week, we're going to be talking about the 1993 action classic Cliffhanger, starring Sylvester Stallone and John Lithgow. For those of you guys just joining us for the first time, I say this every week, and if you tune in every week, then I'm sure you're tired of hearing it. But for those people who've never watched the show before, basically the idea is it's like a book club. I tell you what kind of movie we're going to be watching that week, and you can watch it, and then you can send me questions and comments, and we'll talk about it on the show. Typically, since I've been doing this, it's been kind of forgotten classics, or because B movies typically were kind of the low budget, independent, kind of almost straight to video, but not quite, films. But frankly, those movies kind of suck. So what I've been doing is I've kind of changed the definition of B movie in this case to include movies we enjoyed 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, 30 years ago, but really we haven't talked about lately. And I think that includes Cliffhanger. Basically, the premise of Cliffhanger is Sylvester Stallone is a kind of a mountain rescue guy in the Rocky Mountains. He's a professional mountain climber, and I guess, the thing about this movie I always found interesting is it's like, okay, so he basically, people get lost in the mountains. Hey, I'm stuck on top of this peak, so now Sylvester's going to climb up to the top of the peak and then throw the guy over his shoulder and then rappel down the side of a mountain? Maybe. Sylvester's about 5'6", so hopefully it's just a small child up on the side of the mountain, but you never know. Anyway, so that's his job. At the beginning of the movie, there's a big tragedy where he failed to rescue somebody who's stuck, and that person bit the dust. And he was so overcome with grief that he left. He left the Rocky Mountains and I guess was living in the city or something at that point, working in an office. I'm not sure what other skills. If you're a professional rock climber, I'm not sure what other skills. Maybe he also had his Juris Doctorate. I'm not sure. Anyway, so then he comes back to get his lady love, who is still up, working as a rescue person. She's like a helicopter pilot. And while this is going on, so he's back, kind of they're dealing with their little stilted romance thing going on. There was a hijack. Basically, the Treasury Department was transporting $100 million in $1,000 bills through the air. And they were hijacked by basically a creepy John Lithgow, who's often rather creepy. He's I guess he's an international terrorist, bank robber type. And his international gang hijacks this plane to steal the money, but it goes horribly wrong, and the money, which are in these cases, falls over the Rocky Mountains, and then their plane crashes. So now they're stuck in the mountains looking for the money. They managed to get Stallone. Basically, they claim to be lost hikers or something. So Stallone goes up there with another hiker who he has a beef with, basically. They used to be friends, but after the tragedy, they've kind of turned on each other. So basically, at that point, they're going up there, and they discover, oh no, these really aren't lost hikers. These are trained killers and mercenaries. One thing leads to another. Basically, the bad guys lose. To make a long story short, the good guys win, and good times had by all. Originally, the script was supposed to be about a hurricane, about mercenaries and thieves robbing somebody during a wild windstorm. It was going to be called Gale Force. Unfortunately, they thought that would be just way too expensive. I guess a few fans, way too expensive. So they junked that idea, and they turned it into Cliffhanger, which they changed everything. Instead of hurricane, now they're rock climbers. I guess now it's all in the mountains. The director is Rennie Harlin, who directed another B Movie Club favorite, The Long Kiss Goodnight. Stallone was originally supposed to be in a John Hughes comedy with John Candy about two feuding neighbors, and when that went down the tubes, he signed on to do Cliffhanger. This is actually one of his kind of comeback movies. As I'm sure you know, in the 80s he was huge. He was Rambo and Rocky. By the end of the 80s, he was doing things like Stop or My Mom Will Shoot and things like that. So his career was kind of going down the tubes. But in the early 90s, he kind of rebounded a bit with a couple good movies, such as this one. Originally, the villain was supposed to be played by Christopher Walken. And he pulled out, so they literally hired John Lithgow at the last minute. What's funny is John Lithgow is supposed to be, I guess, he's supposed to be American. Like he used to work for military intelligence before he found out that it was more profitable to work for the other side. But he has like a crazy kind of quasi-British accent of indeterminate origin. And his gang of mercenaries is really kind of bizarre as well. There's like two British guys, one with a crazy Cockney accent. There are two guys with long, stringy hair who look like roadies for Whitesnake. There's the guy from the inner city who talks like he's from Boys in the Hood. It's like, I'm not sure how all these guys met or what the back origin story is, but it's kind of a bizarre combination of people that they got together. But whatever's clever. You also have Michael Rooker plays another one of the climbers, another B movie favorite, Michael Rooker. You've seen him in a few things. Most recently, I think he was like in Slither, which I'm sure we'll be talking about in the coming weeks. Janine Turner plays the love interest, helicopter pilot, basically playing the exact same role that she had on when she was in Northern Exposure. Ralph Waite from the Waltons, exactly. Why is he in this movie? He plays another helicopter pilot. This was his big comeback, I guess. I don't know. You know, there was about a 35-year lag between the Waltons and Cliffhanger. He was just waiting for that perfect script, perhaps. I don't know. What's interesting about this is all the rock climbing stunts were real. There was very little like green screen or special effects that were used. A lot of the people did their own stunts. Like they'd be standing on the edge of a cliff, but they would like kind of tie them up so that they couldn't fall over the side. It's funny because Stallone is notoriously afraid of heights. Notoriously. So early on in the filming, he was like literally crawling on the ground. But I guess by the end of the movie, he was more or less over it. I guess we're all a little bit afraid of falling to our death. I don't know if that's a particular strange phobia. But I guess he got over it. The other thing is that with the rock climbing that he did do, his hands got so rough, he claimed that it messed up his golf game for a long time after that. So that was the thing he was concerned about. I watched the DVD commentary, and I do not recommend it. It is by far one of the most boring commentaries. I finally gave up about 3/4 through the movie when Rennie Harlin, the director, starts telling me the difference between stalactites and stalagmites. I'm like, yeah, thanks for that one, Rennie. And also you hear Stallone talk about how, because they're up in the mountains. I mean, it's cold, it's snowing, and yet his character found excuses to take off his shirt a few times. He's like swimming in freezing water with his shirt. It's like, come on. Okay, we get it. You're Stallone. Half your thing is your muscles, but, you know, please. A little realism, perhaps. The entire movie takes place in the Rocky Mountains, but ironically it was filmed in Italy. I don't know if it was cheaper to do or they could do stunts there that they couldn't do within the United States. Strangely enough, the only scenes that were filmed in Colorado were the exterior of the planes that were flying, at 14,000 feet. So you couldn't even see the Colorado. And there's actually one stunt. It was actually the most expensive stunt ever done in any movie, and actually the most dangerous, where there's a guy, he basically slides down a wire from one plane to another plane. Stuntman really did that. Obviously very dangerous, never been done before, most expensive stunt, and because of that, they could only do it once, because they weren't going to risk sending this guy out and into the great beyond more than once. So that's good to know. This movie is 85% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. Like I said, as far as action films go, it's a lot of fun. It's cool seeing the mountain climbing stunts. Mountain climbing is one of those things where it just seems crazy to me. I mean, they have him hanging upside down under a cliff and craziness. So if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. It is streaming instantly on Netflix. It still is. Go ahead and check that out. Next week, we're going to be doing that comedy classic from the 90s, There's Something About Mary. If you haven't seen it, rush out and seen it. Send me your questions and comments. I'm on Twitter at KD9575. You can also reach me at Facebook. You can post any favorite scenes, favorite quotes on the page at YouTube. As you know, and every episode with a totally random, out of context quote from Cliffhanger. This one's from John Lithgow and his crazy quasi-British accent. Here we go. If you can't find the money, you're useless, and useless things are usually discarded.